Welcome to the Shabbat channel, a taste of CSAIR in your inbox. We wish that we could be with you in person, but for now we think this is the next best thing. So check out this week's episode for music from an amazing artist and Torah from our own CSAIR community. For now, you'll have to supply the Kiddush. Shabbat Shalom.
Hello, CSAIR community. Thank you for welcoming me into your homes as we all welcome in the Shabbat. How many times during the early days of the pandemic did you find yourself at a grocery store looking at that last package of toilet paper on the shelf, or flour or hand sanitizer? How many times did you leave that item behind for somebody else? How many times when stores began to restock, did you help yourself to one of these items, not knowing if you'd find it on your next shopping trip? It's human nature to enter into survival mode when times get tough, and it's laudable to provide for our loved ones. We can all come up with justifications for why we might need something in short supply more than the next person. Perhaps we're shopping for homebound relatives, or we have childcare issues and can't get out of the house easily, or someone in our household is at high risk for COVID complications and we need to make that once-a-month trip to the grocery store really count. Each of these justifications for taking a second package of flour is reasonable. But if everyone acted on their needs, somebody else would have to do without. So, what does this have to do with Parshat B'Shalach, which we read this Shabbat? Buried in the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the parting of the sea, the quest for water in the desert, and the battle with Amalek is the story of the manna, which dropped from the heavens daily to sustain our ancestors on their travels. If you don't recall the story, you may be familiar with the expression manna from heaven, which many of us associate with Judy Matthews cooking. But there's more to the story than the lore that the manna was highly nutritious and took on whatever flavor the diner fancied. What jumped out at me when I read the text was that the Israelites were instructed to gather only a single portion of manna to satisfy their needs for that day, except on Erev Shabbat, when they could gather 2 portions because manna did not fall on Shabbat. And to reinforce this, anyone who gathered more than their fair share found that their portion shrank to its appropriate size. And anyone who gathered an inadequate portion found that it grew to a size that met their need. Thus, everyone's nutritional needs were provided for, regardless of variations in caloric intake. Most commentators interpret the story of the manna as a message that we Jews must have faith that God will provide for our needs. But rereading it during this time of food insecurity, when so many are out of work, dependent on food pantries, and fearful of stepping into crowded supermarkets, it struck me that the story conveyed another message. And perhaps that message is best expressed in Yiddish. Don't be a schnorrer. Central to meeting our own needs is ensuring that the needs of others are met. In fact, if we were to meet only our own needs, we may be nourishing our bodies, but not our souls. And what's more vital to human survival than nourishing the soul? Even under the most extreme conditions, humankind has been preoccupied with nourishing the soul. We've all heard stories of concentration camp victims who divided their last piece of bread into even smaller portions to share it with others, although that one piece was alone inadequate to meet their own caloric needs. And yet somehow people who did this and those who benefited from their generosity survived. I also think of the biblical stories of Abraham feeding his flock before entering his tent to eat, or of Rivka drawing well water for 10 camels before concerning herself with her own needs. There's a verse in Deuteronomy that states, Venatati esev besadcha livhemtecha ve'achalta ve'savata. And I will give grass in your fields to your livestock, and only then, you will eat and be sated. Talmudic authorities interpret this verse as meaning that people are prohibited from eating before feeding their animals. Asur le'adam sheyochal kodem sheyiten ma'achal livhemto. The inclusion of these allegories in the Torah conveys that caring for others is central to caring for ourselves. And if we must meet our animals' needs before meeting our own, how much more true must that be of meeting the needs of our fellow human beings? Something I've always loved about our CSAIR community is that we come together to help one another by providing food, by making deliveries to others, and in pre-pandemic times by hosting others for meals in our homes. But we have to think beyond our own community. We're all in this pandemic together, every one of us on this planet. And each of us bears responsibility to ensure that we all make it through intact. So how can we do that? By embracing the social contract that's part of the fabric of our religion. On a macro level, this might mean making an occasional food delivery to a homebound or out-of-work person, donating a few hours of our time or some money to a food pantry, like Potts on Webster Avenue, or wearing a mask around others, or even just leaving that last sack of flour on the grocery store shelf. Any one of these acts is nourishment for the soul. Shabbat Shalom.
Hey CSAIR, I'm Jackson Mercer. I'm a Hebrew College Rabbinical student in Boston where I study with one of your own Alex Matthews. And I'm also a Jewish musician and songwriter, and I'm really excited to share a little bit of music with you today. This song is a setting for Psalm 93, a psalm that we sing during Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday nights that talks all about the power of the waves and the ocean and those as mechanisms for divinity. And I can't think of a better time to think about waves and the ocean and divinity than as we stand now in our collective narrative as we're reading this week's Torah portion on the edge of Yam Suf, as we stand on the edge of redemption. This song is super easy to sing along with. There's one line that's just for you. It's the last three words of the psalm, Adonai le'orech yamin. And the melody goes like this, Adonai le'orech yamin. Luckily for you, we've brought in some help. So over here and over here, you're going to have two people singing along with you. So if you get lost, just follow them.
Adonai leorech